Well, hey there guys, and welcome back. On this week's show, 5 more tips and tricks that will make your day in the shop just a little bit easier. Well, I've already done 2 of these, and quite honestly, they have met with some really great response from you guys, the viewers. So I thought I would bring you number 3 here today, or episode 3, where I'm going to give you 5 more tips and tricks. Now, whether or not it is a mind-blowing trick or tip, or whether or not it's just something simple, it's still useful. And that is where we go with our first one, with something simple, but one of those things that you think, why didn't I think of that? Well, in our shops, we use lubricants. That's just the way it is. It could be anything. This is just a graphite spray that I use for some things in the shop, but some of them come with these little straws, and they get lost. They're constantly getting lost. And for years, I've taken a piece of masking tape or Scotch tape or whatever and just taped it on the can, or a rubber band. But then the rubber band gets brittle and it breaks and you lose your straw. So what do you do with them? Well, some manufacturers have placed a little clip here that hold this straw. And while that's cool and everything, I mean, you have to remember to put it there or it could still get lost. It's not contained. Well, let me just show you this here. This is one of those tricks that when I first learned it, I thought, this is so cool. Right around the inside of this can, right here, there's a lip. There's a little lip. And what you can do is you can take the straw, put it into that lip, hold it at one end and bend it around, and it will sit in there just like that, and it'll stay in that lip. Then you can just take your lid and put it back on. It does not interfere with putting the lid on your can. So now your straw is inside here. How brilliant is that? And then when you need it, it's easy enough to get out. Just make sure you hold one end and give it a little poke, and there you go. It pops right out and you're ready to use it again. It may give it a little bit of a curve, but you can straighten it out rather easily, and at least you know where it is, and at least you don't have to go searching for one or, you know, do without. So there you go. Trick number 1, a great place to store the straws that come with your lubricant cans. Well, the next tip of the day has to do with glue-ups. And whenever you're working on your bench, or at least for me, I hate getting glue on the bench. It just makes a horrible mess, makes for an uneven surface. The glue gets hard in those areas that it sits there. It dents the wood of your other projects after it hardens. It's just a nightmare. So for smaller projects, you can use a piece of wax paper on your bench. But what if it's a larger project? Well, if it's a larger project, I like to use freezer paper. And it comes in large rolls. In fact, this is the end of an old roll that I had. I just ended up purchasing a roll at the big box store of freezer paper. It was like $20 for something like 750 or 800 feet of this stuff. Just a crazy cheap price. And it works really well. As well, let's say that you don't have a lot of surface area or assembly room in your shop. For me, one of the flattest and largest surfaces in the shop is the table saw, and I'd like to do assemblies there as well. So I just place freezer paper down, shiny side up, and I do my glue up. I just do a little bit of masking tape, tape it down, cover the whole surface. And the best part is with freezer paper is once you're done your glue up, the paper's not done. You don't have to throw it out. You can sit it off to the side, and because one side is coated, here's some old Type-On 3 that's on here. You can just peel it off. So the glue comes right off. If you have little bits here or larger areas of glue that are stuck on there, you just have to crease the paper a little bit. You can get one end of the glue, and like I said, because it's coated, the glue peels off of the of the freezer paper, and you can reuse it. So all in all, I get 3, 4, sometimes 5, 6 glue ups out of one length of freezer paper. So the stuff lasts forever. So when doing glue ups, either small or large, a great way to save the surface of your tools or the surface of your bench and to keep the mess from getting everywhere is use some freezer paper, whether it be thicker stuff like this or the little thinner stuff that you get on the larger rolls. It's a great way to save the surfaces of your tools and your bench when doing glue ups. Our next tip involves more stuff about glue. And I don't know about you guys, but how many times do you spend a glue up when it gets lower in the bottle doing this, shaking it down to the bottom or waiting for it to come down? Well, you don't have to do that. So what you're going to need is 2 pieces of 3/4 inch thick plywood that is 3 inches by 3 inches, and you will mark the center on both. On one of them, you will end up marking a hole that is the same diameter as what this lid is here on your glue. Then over at the drill press, you will drill a 1.5 inch diameter hole in one of them, as well as the circle that you drew out, you will cut it out on the scroll saw. You will now need a third square, 3 inches by 3 inches, but this one will be 1/2 inch plywood. And at this point, all you really need to do is I've marked some holes here that will center this, and the hole, the 1.5 inch hole that we did not drill all the way through, that will go on the bottom. And we will just screw this together just like this. This piece here with the size for our glue cap, this will get glued on the top, just like that. So at this point we can just screw this together, and then I'll show you what we end up with. So all you need to do is take one of these little medicine cups, and that will sit in that little recess down here in the bottom. What's it for? It catches the drips from your glue bottle, which will now sit upside down like this on your little stand. And while you're doing your glue up, there's no need to shake the bottle down or wait for the glue to come to down to the tip, because it's already there. Just do your glue up, put it back, and then carry on. When you need the bottle again, you grab it, you do the next little bit, put it back in its stand, and away you go. When you're done, close the lid to your glue bottle, and that's it. Once the glue in this little cup ends up drying, if there's enough of it in there, dump it back into your bottle. If not, wait till it dries. You can just hook it with your fingernail and it pops right out when you're done, and put the cup right back into the bottom there to catch the drips for your next glue up. So simple, yes. Convenient and extremely helpful and handy, you betcha. Well, for the 4th tip of the day, it involves your dust collection. And for starters, this isn't the tip, but these bags, a lot of people take those bags when they're full and they throw them out. Don't do that. These are thick, thick bags. You can dump them into a much cheaper garbage bag and throw the garbage bag away, or do whatever it is that you do with it, and keep reusing these bags over and over and over again. You don't need to change them unless you get a hole in it. But what the problem is for me is putting the bag back on. So let me dump and empty this bag, and I'll show you a great method to help you when you're trying to get these bags back on, instead of fighting with this ring that holds it all together. So when changing the bag, you don't need to struggle with that band that holds it on. Normally you get the bag falling down and it gives you a hard time trying to get the band back on. Well, just snap a couple of rare earth magnets to hold the bag in place, to free up your hands to be able to work with the band. The ones I'm using here actually are just cheap fridge magnets, and I'm just snapping them on to the metal housing of the dust collection. It holds the bag in place, and I'm able to clip it in there where it's supposed to be without fighting with it and without a struggle. It makes it much faster, much easier, and way less frustrating. Guys, one other thing here. If you're not wearing a dust mask when you're changing these bags, you are doing it wrong. Well, for our final tip of today's show, it involves the table saw. And one of the most inaccurate gauges in most shops happens to be the table saw angle gauge that's on the front of the saw. I'm not saying that the individual lines are not accurate. I'm just saying that they're kind of a thick line, and what's to say that if you need 7 degrees or if you need 8 degrees or what have you, what's to say that you're getting it, because there's a large margin of error. Not to mention that if you're not looking dead on to that line, if you're looking off to the side, it can mess with your measurements. So what do? Let's head over to the table saw and I'll show you. Well, what I have done is constructed this crazy thing, and this lives on my table saw. You don't normally see it on the show because it's in behind the controls. But what it is it has a hole right here which coincides with the exact dimensions of the spindle for my raising and lowering mechanism of my blade. And as well, it has this little shelf, and this shelf has a great big fender washer countersunk into it and epoxied in place. So let me take this over to the table saw and I'll show you what we do with this. Well, let me just show you how this works. What we have is right here we have our pointer, which is for our angle guide or gauge on the front of the saw. Now I've removed our height registry or our height gear, and all I'm going to do is place this. It has to go over the key, and then it goes right to the back, just like that, and it'll sit there like that. But now what I'm going to do is bolt it through this hole. I've drilled a tiny hole into this gauge, and I'm going to bolt it together to our angle gauge of our saw. Just like that. And once you get it installed, you can put this piece back on your saw. Now, before you tighten it down, you just want to make sure that when you turn to raise your height, that your bracket is not turning. It should be connected to the actual gauge itself, or the pointer for the angles, not to the actual spindle that raises your blade. So let me just get this put back on here. I'll set the set screw and I'll show you what happens next. Now, a lot of you already know that I use a Beal tilt box on my table saw to check for square, but I find it a little difficult when you're down here cranking the crank and then you're trying to look up at the table to see what's happening with your blade. So that bracket holds my tilt box. So what do you do here in order to make this work? So the first thing that you need to do is you need to check that your blade is square, and you can do that by placing your tilt box onto the table, zeroing it out, and then you can check it on your blade to make sure that it's still at 0. Once you're sure that your blade is at 90 degrees to your table, you just have to put your tilt box here into your little bracket. Now, it doesn't matter that it's not reading 0 down here, because what's to say that this is square to your tabletop? So at this point, just zero it out. So now the cool part here is I'm just loosening my blade on the side, and once I tilt it, check that out. It is giving me exact readings of whatever our blade is up top. So I can just look here and see what's going on. So let's just take it to, does it really matter? 23. Here, we'll tighten this down, and let's just see what we end up with. 22.8. Well, what does it say up top? 22.8. I don't know about you guys, but I think that's pretty cool, and that sure as heck makes this thing, the gauge down below, a little more accurate than what it is under normal circumstances. And there you have it. 5 more tips to make your woodworking day a little easier, a little less frustrating, maybe a little more enjoyable. Guys, these are not earth-shattering tips. These are not that moment. It is just some of the things that you can do to make it a little easier. And if they work for you, then they work for you. If the tilt box thing doesn't work for you down there at the gauge itself, stick the thing on the blade. That's how I did it for years before I moved it to the front. And there's nothing wrong with that. That works just as well. If the glue bottle holder doesn't work for you, prop it up in a corner. Or if it's a workout for you, just shake the bottle until the glue comes down. Or keep the glue bottle full. It's up to you. There's many ways around it, but these are just a few little things that help. That parchment paper, I'm going to tell you, is one of the best things ever if you're like me and you're messy at glue ups. Depending on the size of the glue up, it's messy as it is, but now that I have this big thing of paper, now I just have to find a home for it. So that's something I'll have to deal with anyways. And you know what, maybe I'll do a show on a holder for it or something. That could work. We'll give that a try, see how it goes, but I got to get it out of the corner because I'm always knocking it and bumping it or whatever. Either way, the parchment paper is just another great idea. The rare earth magnet thing on the dust collector bag. For years I have struggled with getting that bag on the dust collector and getting the band around it. You know, you wish you had 2 extra hands and that sort of thing. I don't know why I never thought of the rare earth magnets right off the bat. You guys have seen me use them in the shop for everything. It seems like I'm always putting rare earth magnets on stuff or in stuff. So why I didn't think years ago when I first started changing the collector bag, why I didn't think to use the magnets, I don't know. But I'm glad that I finally discovered that that's what you can do to make it easier, because honestly it turned it from a job that was tedious and that I hated to a job that just takes a few seconds and you can get it done. Few seconds, no, okay, it takes a minute or 2, but either way it's a lot faster and a lot less frustrating with those rare earth magnets. Either way, guys, some of you have probably heard some of these before, some of you may not have, but I'm sure that some of these tips today are going to be useful to some of you. Guys, I want to thank you so much for tuning in this week. Who knows if there's going to be an episode 4. All I know is that if I get a good response from this show and you guys are seeming to enjoy it, etc., etc., I will make another one. Just go until I run out of tips or until I run out of ideas, I guess. Either way, if you haven't already, guys, please don't forget to like and subscribe. Click the bell so that you don't miss the notifications of future episodes of the program. It's been a lot of fun today. I enjoy these videos. You know, it kind of reminds me that of all the little things I've learned along the way, and it's fun to share them with you guys and hear your reactions to them down below. Either way, guys, I want to thank you so much for tuning in, and I hope you're going to join me again next week when I bring you yet another Alternative Tuesdays.